The night my daughter called me staff, the ballroom lights hit my face like an interrogation lamp, and every contract I'd signed started flipping in my head like cards. I was in a black suit with an orange boutonniere I'd picked up from a corner florist on Clark, $8 cash, because I wanted to match the winter marigold accents I'd quietly helped pay for. Alexa lifted the microphone and smiled for the cameras. Then she glanced my way, frowned, and said, "Let's keep staff out of the family photos. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from." It was Nov 29, 2025, Saturday night in Chicago's River North. Paragon Hotel's ballroom, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet easing through a slow version of Moon River, and $28,740 in peonies and winter ranunculus haloed around the head table. The planner with the tablet had just whispered, "We'll bring Dad in after the bridesmaids," and I'd nodded like a kid being allowed to stay up late. Then the word staff hit, light as snow but sharp as glass. Someone laughed, someone else clapped. My sister Ruth froze mid-sip of Malbec, eyes cutting to me, the way you look at a glass tipping in slow motion. On the DJ board, I saw a red peak blink when the insult landed. Kellen would later tell me it clipped at 0.1 dB on channel 2. I stepped backward so cleanly you would have thought I'd rehearsed it, ending up beside a silver bus tub and a stack of white napkins. A server squeezed by with a tray of champagne. "Sorry, sir," he whispered, not sure if I was a guest gone astray or, as I'd just been christened, staff. I touched the edge of the venue settlement sheet draft, folded in my inside pocket. "Final balances due, deck 28, it said in small blue type. I had paid $180,500 in deposits, refundable holds, because my attorney, Maya Ortiz, told me to structure it that way when the planning started in May. Deposits from you, approvals, and go signatures from Alexa and Brandon. If anything goes sideways, your sponsorship can lawfully withdraw." I'd nodded then, thinking sideways meant a vendor delay or a snowstorm. I never pictured sideways being my own daughter treating me like a rental chair. The planner tried to fix it, bless her. "We'll bring you in after family portraits," she said softly, eyes apologizing for things she hadn't done. I could smell sugar and eucalyptus from the cake table, those sugar glass icicles the decorator insisted would look like winter. Somewhere a timer dinged in the hotel kitchen, and the quartet slid into their final cadence. "Dad, can you just stand near the kitchen door?" Alexa said, not quite whispering, not quite public either. The microphone on the stand caught half of it. The ballroom's house speakers didn't miss much that night. I didn't argue. I did what I've always done when the room goes loud. I took inventory. The conditional gift letter, dated May 3rd, sat behind the settlement sheet in my pocket. One paragraph in plain English: "Sponsorship is contingent on respectful acknowledgement of the biological father at the ceremony and reception." No case law, no Latin, just a boundary written down while we were calm. Standing there by the kitchen door, I felt the words go from ink to action. Ruth found me. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said, which was only true if you count a building as fine while the foundation is cracking. I watched them pose. Alexa's hand on Brendan's chest, Brandon's cufflinks glinting under the chandelier, a wall of flowers I'd partly paid to make happen. I could almost hear the bank app numbers ticking like radiators. $50,000 to the venue hold, $25,000 to the caterer, $12,500 to the quartet, the rest stacked like playing chips. When the photographer waved the next group in and still didn't wave me, I slid the boutonniere straight, breathed once through the nose, and made a simple decision that felt like setting down a heavy box. The gift I'd offered died right there, quiet, lawful, and final. The photos would go on without me. The bill wouldn't. Not after tonight. The elevator mirrors on the ride to my floor showed a man who paid for flowers he wasn't allowed to stand beside. I kept catching my own reflection between gold trim and chandelier ghosts, asking the question no father wants to ask. When did I become an embarrassment to my own child? The doors opened with a soft bell, and I walked down carpet patterned like spilled confetti to my room at the Paragon. The key card light blinked green. I stepped into the kind of silence that makes a hotel room feel like a stage after the audience has gone home. I dropped my jacket over the chair and sat on the carpet. The boutonniere pin pricked my thumb. A clean sting, almost a favor. Something to anchor me. The bedside clock read 11:43 p.m., Saturday, Nov 29, 2025. I pulled the blue folder from my inside pocket and slid out the conditional gift letter. Maya had printed it on thick paper back in May. Flat language, no theatrics. Sponsorship is contingent upon respectful acknowledgement of the biological father at the ceremony and reception. I read it aloud like scripture. The words didn't tremble. I did. The hotel had a kettle that looked like it had survived 3 remodels. I filled it from the bathroom sink and steeped a paper-wrapped tea bag until the water turned the brown of old wood. That's when Ruth knocked. 3 short raps I've known since childhood. You don't have to open, she said through the door. But I'm not leaving the hallway until you tell me you're not alone. I let her in. She handed me a bottle of water and the napkin she'd kept from dinner, the corner stained with Malbec. You heard it? I asked, though the answer was already in her eyes. I heard it, she said, and I watched them pose without you. She sat on the carpet like it was our mother's kitchen floor, elbows on knees. What are you going to do? I unlocked my phone and opened voice memos. I've developed an old man habit during toasts. I hit record, not for gotcha moments, just to remember speeches after the noise fades. I scrolled to tonight's file and pressed play. The tinny room capture held its breath as the planner cued the photographer. Then Alexa's voice came through, smaller than it felt under the chandeliers, but clear enough. Let's keep staff out of the family photos. Ruth flinched like the word had teeth. Back pocket, I said. That's where I keep things. That matter. Tonight it moved from the right to the left. She didn't need the translation. Left pocket means active business to me. Right pocket means archive. She nodded. My phone buzzed. Kellen. You okay? I can export the board audio in the morning. Clean pull. Timestamp shows 8:14 p.m. for that moment. He followed with a photo of the DJ console, Channel 2's red LED frozen in a blink. I typed back, I appreciate you. Save a wav. No rush tonight. Are you going to tell her how you feel? Ruth asked. Stared at the teacup. I already did. In May, in plain English. She signed it with her eyes when she looked at me and saw a bus tub. Ruth leaned her head against the side of the bed. Then tonight isn't about feelings, she said. It's about following directions you wrote to yourself 6 months ago. I took the hotel stationery, cream, with Paragon letter pressed across the top, and wrote 3 lines with the complimentary pen. What I paid. Refundable deposits totaling $180,500 across venue, caterer, decor, florist, quartet, videographer. What remains due? $314,180.44 per vendor contracts listed to Alexa and Brandon as responsible parties. What I won't accept, being presented as staff while functionally underwriting the stage. I underlined the 3rd line until the paper embossed. I slid the note behind the gift letter. Ruth reached into her purse and pulled out a square of cake wrapped in cocktail napkins, the sugar glass icicle edging still sharp. You missed dessert, she said. You also missed nothing. We sat. With that, the kind of quiet you only get with siblings who've seen you at your worst and your best and don't love you any less for either. I checked my bank app and scrolled the holds. $50,000 venue, $25,000 caterer, $12,500 quartet. The others lined up like freight cars. Refundable, pending final settlement. The word refundable looked different now, not like hope, more like policy. Policy is what keeps the floor from falling in when people stop acting right. At 2:07 a.m., after Ruth went back to her room, I cleaned the boutonniere pin and tucked the flower into a glass of water like a hospital patient. I opened my email and started a draft to Maya. Subject: Paragon, contingency triggered. Hi Maya, it's Martin. Tonight, Alexa publicly referred to me as staff over the house system during family photo call. I was not included in the photos. I have a room. Recording. The DJ will provide a clean board pull in the morning. Timestamp 8:14 p.m. Requesting Monday meeting to review. 1. Withdraw sponsorship under the May 3rd letter. 2. Initiate change of bill to per venue policy. 3. Notify vendors and reissue. Balances to responsible parties. Alexa Hart, Brandon Cole. Please advise on exact sequence and language. MI saved the draft, but didn't hit send yet. Before I closed my laptop, I opened the co-signature PDFs folder and scrolled. Florist, June 11th, Decor, June 13th, Quartet, June 15th, Videographer, June 18th, Venue, June 20th. Each one bore their names like wet footprints across a tile floor. The kettle's metal clicked as it cooled. Outside, the city hummed the way Chicago does at 3 in the morning. Distant siren, a bus brake sigh, wind rehearsing winter on Michigan Avenue. I lay on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling. Sprinkler, the little red glass bulb glinting. A safety device waiting. My letter was a safety device too. Tonight it broke, calmly, right on schedule. When the alarm finally rattled my phone near 7:10 a.m. Sunday, I didn't feel righteous. I felt organized. I put on the jacket, slid the blue folder into my briefcase and checked my pockets. Left. Letter, stationery note, bank list. Right. Nothing. That was new. I locked the door behind me and headed for the lobby printer. It was time to stop bleeding in private and start writing in public. I started my revenge at the concierge printer. 3 warm pages sliding out, black ink still fresh enough to smudge. The paper looked harmless, but it decided who owned the night. It was Sunday morning, November 30th, grey sky over Wabash Avenue, snow threatening but never falling. I met Maya Ortiz at a cafe across from the old Marshall Fields clock, the kind of spot where people close property deals or break up over lattes. She'd been my attorney for years, a contract specialist who smiled only when a clause landed cleanly. She slid her glasses down and read the conditional gift letter I'd emailed at dawn. "You actually did it," she said. "You enforced." "Respect." I stirred my coffee. "She called me staff in front of 200 people, Maya. That's not family, it's payroll." Maya nodded and pulled a blue pen from her blazer. "All right, let's make sure we don't lose the thread. You paid $182,500 in refundable deposits. The final balances, $314,180.44, sit with the vendors, co-signed by Alexa and Brandon. You have every right to withdraw as sponsor. What we'll do is simple. Change the billing responsibility before the settlement date, which is December 28th, I finished for her. She smiled. Good. You remember better than most clients. The Paragon's contract allows a change of bill to before the final balance if sponsorship is withdrawn for cause. The insult qualifies as cause under your clause. She flipped to the section she'd highlighted months ago. Contingent upon respectful acknowledgement. I passed her my phone. I've got the recording. Timestamp 8:14 p.m. Channel 2. Audio from the DJ board. She said the word staff into a live mic. Maya played it once, face unreadable, then clicked pause. Perfectly audible. That's your proof of breach. I'll draft a one-page withdrawal letter for your signature. She leaned in. Here's the sequence. You'll notify all vendors in writing by December 5th. You'll attach the letter and the relevant clause from each contract, showing Alexa and Brandon as co-signers. Each vendor will reissue the remaining balance to them. The Paragon will process your refund under their own policy. If they contest, we'll file a declaratory action before December 22nd. All clean, all lawful. I looked down at the co-signature. PDFs on her laptop. Each one felt like a time bomb now. Florist, decor, music, videography, venue. Alexa's name printed beside Brandon's, both in confident, sweeping script. They'd wanted control over every aesthetic decision, from napkin shade to the ice sculpture font. That vanity was about to be very expensive. Maya opened her leather planner and underlined a date. Tomorrow, December 1st. You call the Paragon. Ask for Sophie Tran in management. She's meticulous about paperwork. Schedule a meeting to execute the billing change. Bring every document in duplicate. And Martin, she looked at me directly, don't lose your temper. Your power here is procedural. Procedure is what I do best, I said. 35 years of project management taught me revenge isn't rage, it's scheduling. She laughed once, low and sharp. You'd be surprised how few people understand that. When she left, I sat alone, penning notes in my folder. I titled the front page, Operation Paragon, Gift Withdrawal. Under it, 3 bullet points. Gather proof, audio contracts, bank holds, notify vendors, Deck 5. Confirm all balances reissued to responsible parties, Deck 15. I tucked in receipts, my bank printouts, and Ruth's witness notes scribbled on a napkin. Heard Alexa call him staff. 8:14 p.m. As I zipped the folder, I realized something funny. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. Every bruise of humiliation had calcified into strategy. Outside, Wabash was waking up, traffic lights blinking through mist. I crossed toward the Paragon's glass facade and glanced through the revolving doors at the ballroom level where it had all happened. The chandeliers were dark now, tables stripped bare, a janitor mopping the floor where the photographer had stood. Tomorrow, those same doors would open for a meeting about policy. My name might be missing from their photos, but it was still printed on every deposit slip. And by the time the calendar turned to December 7th, my daughter would own exactly what she had claimed, her wedding, completely. The florist, the decor team, the venue. Every penny she flaunted would become her responsibility. All I had to do was follow the paperwork, and I would. The first call wasn't to my daughter, it was to the florist holding $28,640 in white peonies and winter ranunculus. It was Monday, December 1st, the sky the color of nickel, the air sharp enough to wake anyone out of sentimentality. I poured black coffee into a travel mug, set my blue folder on the passenger seat, and drove toward my office in West Loop, the old place where I used to run procurement projects. I still leased the desk. Space? Still liked the quiet hum of copiers and planners? Revenge to me had always been logistics under another name. By 9 a.m., I was on the phone with Juniper and Rye Floral, talking to Marin, the manager. She sounded wary at first. Everyone does when they sense legal language coming, but calmed. As I explained, Madrin, I said evenly, I'm withdrawing sponsorship per Clause 4 of our agreement. The responsible parties, Alexa Hart and Brandon Cole, remain liable for all balances. My deposits stay refundable per your terms. There was a pause, then a slow exhale. We can reissue, she said. Our contracts default to co-signers when sponsorship ends. I'll process the change today. Within an hour, she'd emailed. A new invoice, bill to updated, balance $19,020, due December 28th, 2025. The total at the bottom glittered like quiet satisfaction. I printed it, 3 copies, hole-punched them, and slid them into my blue folder behind the florist tab. At 10:30 a.m., I called CitySet Designs, the decor company that built the mirrored backdrop and the monogrammed ice sculpture that had dripped. All night behind the cake, the owner, Trina, was cheerful until she realized the word withdrawal wasn't about flowers. I'm sorry, she said. Is this personal? Everything involving my daughter is personal, I replied, but this is also contractual. I faxed the conditional gift letter to her direct line. Yes, fax. Some industries still believe in paper that burns real. 10 minutes later, her reply came, "Received. Balance $74,300 will be reassigned to the couple's billing file. Deposits refunded to original source." I didn't need fireworks. I needed timestamps. And by lunch, I had 2. December 2nd. I moved on to the string quartet, a trio of grad students, plus one substitute violinist who'd smiled at me more warmly than my own daughter that night. Their remaining balance was $6,450. They thanked me for handling it with grace and sent a note confirming reissue to Alexa and Brandon with a courteous "Merry Christmas" attached. Irony has a sense of humor. December 3rd. I reached Goldfinch Films, the videographer duo that wanted drone footage over the Chicago River. Their balance, $21,900. They confirmed the update within 20 minutes. No drama, just professionalism. Each confirmed bill to updated email felt like reclaiming inches of my dignity. On December 5th, I drafted the formal notice of withdrawal. The tone was surgical. "Dear Ms. Hart and Mr. Cole, this serves as notice of withdrawal of sponsorship. Under the conditional gift letter, May 3rd, 2025, pursuant to the co-signed vendor agreements and the Paragon Hotel policy, all remaining balances and late fees now rest with responsible parties per contract terms. Supporting documentation attached. Respectfully, Martin Hale." Attached were copies of the letter, the vendor confirmations, and one page I titled Affidavit of Occurrence, my sworn statement of what happened at 8:14 p.m., Novi 29, including Ruth's witnessing and Kellen's upcoming board audio. I blind copied Maya on every email. Her only reply came 10 minutes later. "Perfect tone, keep receipts, don't text her." At 3:00 p.m., Sophie Tran from the Paragon called. "Mr. Hale, I saw your message. You'd like to schedule a billing conference." "Yes," I said. "Earliest available. December 7th, 11 a.m. I'll prepare the change form. Bring identification and your documentation." Her voice was calm, almost soothing, the kind of voice you trust when the ground beneath you is shifting. That night, I laid everything on the kitchen counter. Letters, invoices, screenshots of refund confirmations, and took one final photo for my records. The documents looked clinical against the dark marble, like a surgeon's tools after a successful operation. I didn't text Alexa. I didn't post, rant, or even vent to Ruth. I simply took my receipts from my right pocket, my paid side, and transferred them to the left. That pocket had always been for ongoing projects, unfinished business, things that still needed time. And this, I realized, wasn't revenge anymore. It was reconciliation with myself. By the time I zipped up the folder and shut off the kitchen light, the house felt lighter. I'd spent half my life teaching contractors to read the fine print. Now I was teaching my daughter the same lesson, that respect, once signed, is enforceable. Seeing. First text from Alexa wasn't, "I'm sorry," it was, "Vendors are harassing us, fix it." I saw it pop up on my screen at 8:27 a.m. December 10th while I was pouring oatmeal into a bowl. No greeting, no punctuation, just entitlement typed. Through clenched thumbs, I set the phone down and let it buzz again. 1, 2, 3 more messages. Each shorter, angrier, more desperate. When I finally opened them, I almost laughed. "Alexa, Marin says you pulled funding." "Alexa, you can't just vanish. This is your mess." "Alexa, you paid deposits. They said balances are ours." I scrolled up, reread the last line, and took a slow sip of coffee. Exactly. By mid-morning, Marin from Juniper and Rye forwarded me the email thread. Alexa's reply read like a teenager caught skipping class. "My father promised. He paid already." Marin's response was as polite as it was lethal. "We show a sponsorship withdrawn under Clause 4B. Responsible parties remain you and Brandon. Balance due, deck 28. I printed that exchange and filed it behind the florist tab in my blue folder. Exhibit C was building itself, one angry email at a time. Then the phone rang. Unknown 312 number. I didn't need to check. I knew the tone before it even spoke. Martin. It's Brandon, he started, breath short, voice crackling like a radio. Signal too close to the sun. You think this little stunt makes you a man? You wouldn't exist without me. I glanced at the call timer, 0017 seconds. Brandon, I said evenly, I existed decades before you figured out what cufflinks were. You signed your name, remember? He cursed. The kind of curse that rattles more than it cuts. I muted the phone for a beat, took another sip of coffee, unmuted and said, This is the last direct call you make to me. Any further contact goes through counsel. Goodbye. I hung up at 3:12 minutes exactly, then typed a short email to Maya, possible intimidation from Brandon Cole. Duration 3:12. No threats of harm, but verbal hostility. Recommend documenting, she replied within minutes. Keep voicemail log. I'll issue a no-contact advisory letter tomorrow. Let them tire themselves out on paper. By December 12th, Sophie Tran sent a tidy update. Venue settlement now lists responsible parties, Alexa Hart, Brandon Cole. Remaining balance, 314,180.44 due deck 28. Sponsor, Martin Hale, withdrawn. Documentation attached. The PDF she attached had a stamp dated 12/12. I stared at the numbers, the inked initials ST, and felt my pulse slow. Nothing feels more like justice than a stamp doing its job. That night, Ruth dropped by with a casserole, mac and cheese heavy on the breadcrumbs, and the dry humor only a nurse can manage. She sat at my table, read Sophie's email aloud and said, if they didn't want the bill, they shouldn't have ordered a 6-foot ice sculpture of their initials. Karma has a freezer. I almost smiled. By December 15th, a group chat labeled Wedding Planning Crew started lighting up again. Screenshots from friends, half pity, half gossip, people whispering about how the sponsor backed out. Someone posted a blurry photo of me near the kitchen door, calling me that staff guy. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the thread after that. Instead, I took a blue highlighter and ran it over 3 lines in my folder. Deposit credits received. Deck 12. Venue confirms transfer complete. Balance 497,380.44. Now owed solely by Alexa and Brandon. The tension wasn't cinematic. It was procedural. Silent, precise. That's the part people don't understand. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just hums under fluorescent light while a printer spits out proof. As I turned off the lamp, my phone buzzed one last time. It was a forwarded photo from Kellen, the DJ, a screenshot of the audio waveform time-stamped 8:14 p.m., Novi 29, the exact moment the word staff cracked through the speakers. He captioned it, clean pull, backed up twice. I smiled for the first time in 2 weeks. The paperwork was airtight. The insults were archived. The silence ahead was mine to orchestrate. The email subject line read, urgent, petition to compel sponsor. It was December 18th, a grey Chicago, Thursday, with sleet that looked like someone shaking glitter over the city. I was reviewing invoices at my kitchen table when the message from Sophie Tran at the Paragon slid into my inbox. She'd forwarded a letter that had arrived through the venue's public email. It came from Cole and Harris LLP, but when I opened the attachment, the signature made me laugh out loud. Ryan Cole Eskira, Brandon's cousin, a first-year associate who thought stationery made him invincible. The letter, written in the legal equivalent of all caps, claimed I had abandoned payment and demanded the venue compel the sponsor to perform his financial duty. The first paragraph misused the word herewith twice. The second cited no contract, just the spirit of familial intent. The third ended with, failure to comply will result in escalatory action. I forwarded it to Maya. Subject line simple. Amateur hour. Her reply came 6 minutes later. We'll file first. By December 20th, Maya had drafted and e-filed a petition for declaratory relief in Cook County Circuit Court, complete with exhibits. Exhibit A, conditional gift letter, May 3. Exhibit B, venue contract listing, responsible parties, Alexa Hart, Brandon Cole. Exhibit C, change of bill to acceptance, Deck 7, with Sophie's initials. Exhibit D, board audio transcript verified by Kellen, timestamp 8:14 p.m., Nov 29. She sent me the filing copy stamped received 12/20/25, Joe 9:42 a.m. When I read the caption, Martin Hale vs. Alexa Hart and Brandon Cole, my chest tightened. Not from guilt, but from the quiet gravity of documentation, turning into consequence. That night, I met Ruth for coffee near Union Station. She wore her nurse scrubs under a heavy coat. You really took them to court, huh? She said. I didn't take them anywhere, I said. They walked there themselves. I'm just holding the door. She stirred sugar into her cup. What? If she calls, she won't, I said. She only calls when there's catering involved. Over that weekend, Deck 2122, Maya and I built the rest of the case file. Kellen signed an affidavit confirming he personally captured the audio and preserved the WAV file. Sophie provided a declaration that the venue's change of Bill 2 was completed per policy and that deposits had been refunded to me on Deck 12. Marin from the florist emailed confirmation of reissued balances. Everything was time-stamped, paginated, bound in a single blue-tabbed folder, the same one I'd started at the hotel printer 2 weeks earlier. On Christmas Eve, while most families clinked glasses, I sat in my living room surrounded by neatly stacked evidence. The radio played carols. I muted it. In the glow of the desk lamp, every page looked like closure in progress. Then December 28th came, final payment day. Predictably, Alexa and Brandon didn't pay a cent. By noon, my phone began to buzz again. Vendors sending payment past due notices. None of them were angry, just factual, their tone now redirected toward the actual signers. Sophie's message arrived at 4:12 p.m. Hi Martin, confirming balances remain unpaid. We'll be adding late fees per contract. Thank you again for your cooperation and professionalism throughout this process. Professionalism. There it was, the word my daughter had forgotten. I replied simply, understood. Documentation retained. That night, I opened the bank app one more time. Every refunded deposit had cleared, $500 credited back, minus small processing fees. My column was green. Theirs was red. Maya called at 8:30 p.m. Court date set for January 12, 2026, earliest slot after the holidays. I told her I'd be there. Outside, snow began to fall. Real snow this time, steady, unhurried, the kind that covers everything equally. It muffled the traffic, the noise, the world. I thought about Alexa, somewhere downtown, maybe checking her own inbox, reading words like payment overdue and interest accruing. They thought revenge would be loud. They thought I'd shout or shame them online. But the loudest sound in my plan was just the quiet ding of an email received, another form filed, another clause upheld. By the time the city's lights blurred through the snow, I closed my folder, labeled it Court, Jan 12, and whispered to myself, Round 1 complete. The judge asked one question that emptied the courtroom of opinion. Who signed the contracts? It was January 12th, 2026, a Monday morning so cold it made breath look like confessions. Snow flurried over the Daily Center Plaza, sticking to the marble lions and the bronze doors. I wore the same black suit from the wedding, pressed, sober, no boutonniere this time. The orange marigold had long since withered in a glass back home. I carried only my blue folder, the one that had travelled from hotel printer to courtroom. Like a witness, the clerk called Hale versus Hart and Cole. The sound of my daughter's married name echoing after mine was a sting I hadn't prepared for. Inside the courtroom, the fluorescent lights hummed. The benches creaked under winter coats and the faint smell of coffee. Maya sat beside me, precise as ever. Black blazer, hair pulled tight, folder tabs in color order. Gift letter, May 3rd. Venue contract, June 20th. Audio transcript, Nov 29. Change of bill to, deck 7. Across from us, Alexa sat stiffly, eyes rimmed in red, her hands twisting a silk scarf. Brandon looked like he'd rehearsed indifference, but hadn't memorized his lines. Their cousin, Ryan Cole, was beside them, the one who'd written that ill-fated petition to compel sponsor. He looked small now, swallowed by his own suit, already sweating under the collar. When the judge entered, everyone rose. He was an older man with half-moon glasses and a tone that said he'd seen every kind of family ruin unfold before 10 a.m. He began simply, "Let's keep emotions brief. This is a matter of contract." Maya stood first. "Your Honor, this case concerns a conditional sponsorship agreement for a wedding held on November 29th, 2025, at the Paragon Hotel in Chicago. My client, Mr. Martin Hale, provided refundable deposits totaling $182,500 for vendor services contingent upon respectful acknowledgement at the ceremony and reception. That condition was breached publicly and verifiably. Pursuant to the signed agreements, balances reverted to the responsible parties, Ms. Hart and Mr. Cole. My client seeks formal declaration of withdrawal and release from any remaining financial obligation." The judge raised his eyebrows. "All right, show me proof." Maya handed up the folder, neatly tabbed. He flipped through the conditional gift letter with my signature and hers, the venue contract bearing Alexa and Brandon's co-signatures, Sophie's change of bill to acceptance, stamped deck 7, and finally, the audio transcript, the moment. My daughter's voice, my child's voice, rang clear through the ballroom system. "Let's keep staff out of the family photos." The judge read the line twice. Then he looked up. "This was broadcast through the venue system?" Maya nodded. "Confirmed by DJ Technician Affidavit, Exhibit D." He turned to Alexa. "Ms. Hart, are these your signatures?" Her voice cracked. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you acknowledge the clause referring to respectful acknowledgement of your father?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Yes." The judge leaned back. "All right, let's hear from the defense." Ryan stood, fumbling papers. "Your Honor, our position is that family support, especially paternal support, is inherently a gift, not a contract. Mr. Hale's emotional response doesn't void the intent." The judge cut him off. "Intent is for toasts, Counselor. I deal in signatures." He tapped the document with his pen. "This is clear. The condition was breached. The sponsor withdrew prior to final payment. The venue accepted. The co-signers remain liable." "That's not sentiment, that's sequence." Ryan stammered something about good faith, but the judge was already writing. He didn't look at me, or at Alexa, or at anyone, really. Just the page. The pen scratched for a few seconds that felt like a decade. Then he read the ruling aloud, voice steady. "The court finds the sponsorship voided by breach of condition. All outstanding vendor balances, late fees, and associated costs are the responsibility of the co-signing parties, Alexa Hart and Brandon Cole. The petitioner, Martin Hale, is fully released of any further financial obligation. Respect, while not a statutory duty, is a condition voluntarily entered into. Payment is not contingent upon emotion, but upon agreement. And the agreement speaks plainly." That final sentence hung in the air like a bell. Respect is not a statutory obligation. payment is, when he banged the gavel, the sound didn't echo, it absorbed into the quiet. The clerk filed the papers. The court reporter stopped typing, and somewhere behind me, a radiator hissed like applause that didn't dare be loud. Maya leaned over and whispered, "You're free." Outside the courtroom, the air tasted like metal and wind. Ruth was waiting by the security line, wrapped in a long red coat. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Better than any Christmas gift," I said. We walked down the marble steps together. The snow had thickened, soft flakes settling on my shoulders like small absolutions. My phone buzzed. Sophie Tran. Court order received. Venue account updated. Sponsor released. Then Marin from the florist. We'll accept a payment plan from the couple by Friday. And finally Kellen. A single thumbs-up emoji, followed by a WAV file icon. No words needed. I didn't reply to any of them. I just stood in the snow and let the cold burn away whatever anger was left. Behind me, the courthouse doors swung open, and for a second I saw Alexa in the reflection, walking quickly, Brandon. At her side, Ryan chasing them with a folder half shut. I didn't call out. Some lessons only work when you let them echo in silence. As we reached the corner, Ruth patted my arm twice, the way she always had since we were kids. "You did it," she said. "No," I said. "The paperwork did." We both laughed. The kind of tired laughter that feels like truth. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's typed, stamped, and signed at 9:42 a.m. on a Monday morning in January. The first bounce charge wasn't mine. It came through my email at 10:14 a.m. January 17th, 4 days after the ruling. The subject line read, "Payment Failure Notice, City Set Designs." The message was short, formal, and unintentionally poetic. The transaction for $74,300 has been declined. Responsible party, Alexa Hart. I sat in my kitchen, sunlight, barely pushing through the blinds, watching my coffee steam over a blue folder that was now more memory than weapon. Every document inside had done its job. Every promise had met its paper. A few hours later, another notification. Juniper and Rye Floral, payment past due. Balance, $1,920. Interest, $382.40 per week. The math of respect in motion. By January 20th, the Paragon's accounting team emailed the couple directly, copying me for record only. I scanned the first line. As per court order, sponsorship by Martin Hale is void. Remaining balance of $314,880.44 is due within 30 days, and then closed the thread. For the first time in months, I didn't feel obligated to reply to anything. A week later, the ripples began. Alexa listed her River North loft lease on Facebook Marketplace. "Beautiful space," the post read. "Owner relocating." The luxury SUV she'd once bragged about was parked in front of the building with a "for sale" rider. I scrolled past it, not out of satisfaction, but a sort of resigned awe. Gravity always works. It just takes its time. Then came the group text, Ruth always keeping me looped in with dry commentary. She sent a screenshot of Brandon's message to their old wedding party thread. "We're sorting it out. We'll handle it." No apology, just public damage control. By January 25th, all vendors had confirmed payment plans. Florist, 6 months. Decor, 12. Venue, 90 days, modest interest. None of them were cruel. They just followed the terms the same way I had. That Friday, I met Sophie Tran in the lobby of the Paragon. The same marble floors where 6 weeks earlier I'd been treated like invisible help. She smiled and handed me a sealed envelope. "This is your final release letter," she said. I opened it on the spot. The header read, "Sponsorship account, closed balance, 0.00. Status, sponsor fully released." She extended her hand. "Thank you for handling this professionally, Mr. Hale. Not many people do." I shook it. "I just kept the receipts," I said. Back home, I slipped that letter into the blue folder behind Exhibit D. It looked almost ceremonial, like the last hymn page in a church book. I placed the folder in the bottom drawer of my desk, not to hide it, but to rest it. That evening, Alexa finally texted, "Alexa, you embarrassed us." I stared at the words, then typed slowly, "I gave you a celebration and a choice. You chose the mic." She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Silence has a way of finishing the sentence for you. Maya sent the official court order PDF that night, clean and final. I saved it to a folder titled Wedding Archive. Then I closed my laptop, leaned back, and let the quiet wrap around me. Justice isn't a movie moment. It's a line item that balances. It's the right names beside the right debts. It's your breath finally coming out steady again. Later that night, Ruth and I met at a small diner on Western Avenue. We shared a slice of pecan pie, still warm, and toasted with coffee mugs. "To paying what you owe," she said. I lifted my cup, including respect. Outside, snow drifted across the window glass. It looked exactly like the night of the wedding. But this time I wasn't standing by. The kitchen door. I was at my own table, paid in full. I used to count money, now I count boundaries. 2 weeks after the hearing, Chicago thawed just enough to make the sidewalks wet and the air smell like iron. I walked the Lake Michigan path one cold January afternoon, the kind of day when the horizon disappears into the fog and everything feels the same shade of gray. The water slapped against the concrete like a patient heartbeat. It reminded me of the rhythm that had carried me through the past 2 months. Document, file, breathe, repeat. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. The weight that had lived behind my ribs since that night at the Paragon was gone, replaced by something unfamiliar, peace that didn't need permission. My late wife's voice returned in pieces as I walked. Small things she used to say over. Coffee. Don't confuse love with rescue. I'd ignored that for years, pouring time and money into Alexa's ambitions because it felt like redemption for all the things I couldn't give her after her mother passed. I thought generosity was proof of love. Turns out it was a down payment on resentment. When she called me staff, it wasn't the word that broke me. It was realizing how invisible I'd let myself become in my own family story. I had built the scaffolding for her life and stood outside the picture when it was finished. I stopped by a park bench overlooking the frozen lake and sat down. The wind came off the water sharp enough to make my eyes water, but I didn't look away. I reached into my coat pocket and found the orange boutonniere pin, the same one from the wedding. The flower was gone now, just the metal stem and clasp. I turned it over in my hand and thought about what it symbolized. Not humiliation anymore, but evidence. A reminder that every story has 2 ledgers, what was spent and what was learned. That night, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the blue folder one last time. I thumbed through each section like an old photo album. Gift letter, invoices, Sophie's declaration, Maya's filings. Every page was cold, factual, but behind each line was an emotion that used to keep me awake. Now, they just felt finished. I picked up a small stack of thank you cards I'd written earlier that week. One for Sophie, who'd upheld policy without taking sides. One for Maya, who turned hurt into law. One for Kellen, who kept the recording that changed everything. And one for Ruth, whose steady presence had been the difference between fury and focus. Inside each card, I'd slipped a $100 gift card. Not as payment, more like punctuation. After sealing the envelopes, I stared at the lamplight pooling across my desk. The world outside was quiet, and so was my mind. People talk about revenge. Like it's chaos, but it isn't. True revenge, the kind that heals, is just a boundary finally respected. It's when the person who tried to rewrite your worth finds out the pen was never theirs. If you've ever been made to feel small by someone you love, remember this. Write it down when you're calm, and read it when the room goes loud. That Line became my rule. The night I was called staff, I almost believed it, but the truth is, staff shows up to work for someone else. That night, I started working for myself. When I closed the folder for good, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt balanced. And after a lifetime of overpaying, balance was the sweetest profit I'd ever made. The wedding album arrived on a Thursday morning. It was one of those padded courier envelopes, bubble-wrapped, the sender's label printed in gold. Lumiere Photography. Your forever moments. For a second, I almost laughed at the irony. Forever moments, indeed. I set it on my kitchen table beside the blue folder, still closed but never far from reach, and made myself wait before opening it. The light outside had that washed-out winter tone, pale and honest. I made coffee, toasted bread, and finally slit the envelope open. The smell of fresh paper and photo varnish hit me like déjà vu. I flipped through the pages, bride and groom under chandeliers, guests mid-laughter, a frozen river of white smiles. I wasn't in any of them. Not the ceremony, not the family portraits, not even the candid crowd shots, until I reached the second-to-last page. There I was, caught in the edge of a wide-angle frame, half-shadowed near the dance floor, holding a napkin and staring toward the stage. Ruth's hand rested on my shoulder, her face turned just enough for the camera to catch a small, protective smile. The caption read, "Uncle Martin, candid moment. Uncle." That made me smile, actually. They hadn't erased me completely. They'd just mislabeled the position. Story of my life. That night, my phone buzzed. Alexa, can we talk? For the first time in weeks, I didn't hesitate. Sure, I texted back. We met the next morning at Café Umbria, a neutral zone with brick walls and burnt espresso smell. She came in with sunglasses on, though it was overcast. She ordered chamomile tea. When she took off the glasses, her eyes were swollen. "I just want to explain," she started. "Go ahead." "It wasn't supposed to come out like that. I panicked. Brandon made a joke about staff earlier that day, and when I said it," she stopped, swallowing hard, "it just came out." "You said it twice," I replied softly. "Once to me, once into a microphone." Tears started to gather. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded payment schedule. Decor, florist, venue, names I knew better than she did. "We're paying it down," she said. "Little by little, Brandon sold the car. I picked up freelance marketing work. We're handling it." "That's good," I said. She nodded, eyes flicking toward the window. "You could have just talked to me." "I did, in May. You signed the letter." Her lips parted like she might argue, then closed again. "I guess I did." The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was arithmetic, something balancing itself without our help. Finally she whispered, "Do you still hate me?" I looked, down at my coffee, then back up. "No, hate's too heavy. I just don't fund disrespect anymore." She nodded slowly. "I understand." We stood to leave. She hugged me, a stiff, trembling hug that didn't fix anything, but at least proved she remembered how. As she walked out, I noticed she was wearing the same scarf from court, but now it looked less like armor and more like an apology. On the way home, I stopped by a corner bodega on Halsted and bought a small orange boutonniere from a half-empty vase. The petals looked tired but alive. I pinned it to my coat, stepped into the winter air, and walked past the Paragon Hotel. Through the glass, I could see a new couple touring the ballroom. The lights glowed, tables empty, promise still fresh. I didn't feel bitterness, only distance, respect. As a color, I realized, it isn't gold or white. It's that burnt orange that keeps shining even in cold light. I touched the boutonniere and kept walking. Some stories end with applause. Mine ended with a receipt and a lesson. Sometimes the greatest revenge is living exactly how they said you couldn't. Calm, paid up, and uninvited. The last check they mailed didn't go to a vendor. It went to me. It arrived in March, tucked inside a plain white envelope with no return address. The postmark said Naperville. The handwriting was Brandon's, neat and deliberate, like someone practicing humility. I set it on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a full hour before opening it. Inside was a single personal check for $2,500, memo line reading, "Thank you for boundaries." I unfolded the note that came with it. "Martin, we're almost done paying everyone off. I got a second job. Alexa's consulting again. I was wrong about a lot. You didn't deserve what happened. I learned more from the court order than any sermon I've heard in years. Take this, not as money, but as acknowledgement. Brandon." I let the letter sit there, breathing in the quiet of my kitchen. No confetti, no irony music. Just morning. Light on paper and the faint hum of my refrigerator. I didn't rush to deposit it. I left it on the counter for 3 days, testing my own heart. Did I want to cash it as vindication or as closure? On the 4th day, I drove to the bank, walked up to the counter and slid the check forward. The teller, a young man with perfect hair, smiled and said, "Mr. Hale, same account as before." "Same account," I said, "but a different story." The funds cleared in 2 days. When Ruth came by that weekend, I showed her the note. She read it once, set it down, and grinned. So the boy finally learned about invoices. I laughed. Turns out responsibility looks good on him. "Would you do it all again?" she asked. I thought about that. The months of silence, the sting of that single-word staff, the nights I spent rehearsing calm instead of rage. "Not the pain," I said. "But yes, the paperwork." That made her laugh so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. "Only you would say revenge is administrative." We toasted with our mugs, laughter filling the small kitchen, steam fogging the window that overlooked Western Avenue. Outside, snow was melting into the gutters, thin streams reflecting, sunlight like silver threads. After she left, I went to my desk and opened the blue folder one last time. I added the check receipt to the back, behind Exhibit D. Then I printed one clean page with a single line in bold. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." I slid it to the front of the folder, closed it, and labeled the spine "Family," right between "Mortgage" and "Health." It looked at home there. That evening I brewed tea and sat by the window as the city softened into dusk. Across the street, a father walked his little girl home from ballet, her pink shoes peeking out from under her coat. She was chattering about something that made him laugh. I hoped he knew to enjoy it while it lasted. If anyone listening to this ever stands under chandeliers, feeling invisible because someone with your name shoves you aside, remember this. You may be staff on their microphone, but you're the author on paper, and authors get the final edit. Mine was typed December 5th, stamped January 12th, and paid in full by spring. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just clears its throat, files a motion, and waits for the mail to arrive. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening at night, set your thermostat the way you like it. No one else gets a vote.